Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy? Sports and Fitness Rants. I'm back, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. Got another great video for you guys today. As usual, you guys know the deal on this channel, man. It's all about setting the record straight, stopping the lies, stopping the narratives, stopping them from rewriting the history. And in this video, man, I want to give a special shout out, man, a special mention for my man Patrick Ewing, Reggie Miller, and Dominique Wilkins, man. I want to just much respect to those three players, man, in particular today in this video. Because once again, man, it's players like Patrick Ewing and Reggie Miller, the Dominique Wilkins, the guys who never won a championship, that played in those 80s and the 90s era, the era I grew up watching, that, they've seemed to be forgotten. But I want to talk about the respect factor that I have for these players, man. And I want to thank you guys, everyone across the world, everyone across the states that's been supporting my channel, man. Much respect to everybody out there, man. The true basketball fans are standing up, man, for real. Much respect, guys. Thank you very much. I am truly humbled by all the support, man, for real. Shout out to everybody in the membership. And I want to send a special thanks out to my man, Story Games, for coming through with the super thanks. Thank you for the continued support. Shout out to Story Games. And I want to send a special shout out to my man, Rick James, right? My man, Rick James, coming through with the super thanks. Rick James, the first person ever sent me a super thanks. So much respect to Rick James for coming through with the super thanks. Thank you for your continued support. And you guys know what to do. Turn the volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So yes, guys, like I said, man, in this video, I just want to do a brief video about Patrick Ewing, Reggie Miller, and Dominique Wilkins. These three players in particular. And just like I said, just the respect that I have for a lot of these guys that I grew up watching. I've talked about it on this channel, guys, right? We talk about things like honor and integrity and class, right? And being a true competitor out there on the basketball court, carrying yourself with these values. But when we think about some of these players, sometimes, over the last several years now, sometimes you'll hear these players be, basically, torn down because they never won a championship, right? So guys like Patrick Ewing and Reggie Miller, Dominique Wilkins, they don't get mentioned oftentimes in these discussions with the great players, because they didn't win a championship, so to speak. And these days, people are putting a lot of stock on championships, but the guys in this era, right, they're going about it the wrong way. That's been the problem right now. So some of the great players, they feel the need to team up, right? Form these super teams to win their championships. Meanwhile, back in the days, the teams that you were on, it was a luck of the draw sometimes. Sometimes your team had drafted some really great players before you, and you came into a great situation. Sometimes you were the only really great draft pick that your franchise would bring in. Other guys wouldn't be as great. You would have to work with lesser talents than some of the other teams. But guys never felt the need to join other great players back in them eras. When we think about a Patrick Ewing, for example, who battled against Michael Jordan year after year after year, more so than anybody else, guys, that I can remember growing up. It was always the New York Knicks going against Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls in the postseason, always battling. I believe Michael Jordan, the Bulls, beat the Knicks. I mean, if you think about it, they played the Knicks, and the Bulls and the Knicks played each other in the playoffs in 1989, I believe in 1991, in 1992, in 1993. Michael Jordan left in 1994. They played, though, the Bulls and Knicks in 1994. Then in 1996, when Michael Jordan came back, they played the Knicks in the postseason. So you're talking about all these years, man, that Patrick Ewing was going against Michael Jordan every single year, battling against Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, man. But Patrick Ewing never decided to team up with Michael Jordan or deciding to team up with a Dominique Wilkins, for example, or another all-time great player, a Charles Barkley, or some of these other players, a Reggie Miller. These guys played on their teams. They were the leaders of those teams, and they wanted to beat Michael Jordan. This is why these guys did not do those things. This was never a thing back in them days to bounce around from team to team. I've told you guys, the great players back in those days played on the same team for years, 10, 11, 12 seasons, their entire careers mostly. You think about it, Patrick Ewing played on the Knicks essentially his entire career except for 2 seasons at the end of his career when he was like 38, 39 years old. Patrick Ewing is synonymous with the New York Knicks. When you think about Patrick Ewing, you think about the Knicks. When you think about the Knicks, when I was growing up, you thought about Patrick Ewing. That's the way it went hand in hand, guys. right? But he was battling Michael Jordan, but he never quit. He kept coming back year after year after year. And the Knicks were a formidable team. They kept getting better. 1991, 1992, 1993. They kept grinding and getting better, improving, right? These are the teams that was battling against Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls in the 90s, in the late 80s, right? So just shout out to Patrick Ewing, like I said, man, for just always going out there, playing with the heart, playing with the integrity, giving it his all, battling against Michael Jordan in that Eastern Conference, battling against the other all-time greats like Dominique Wilkins in those mid to late 80s, battling against the Detroit Pistons in the late 80s, the Larry Birds in the mid to late 80s, right? Going against Reggie Miller in the late 80s into the 90s, battling Michael Jordan his entire career, then coming into the 90s and battling against the Shaquille O'Neals and the Alonzo Mournings in the Eastern Conference, right? It was a battle out there, man. The Cleveland Cavaliers with Brad Daugherty and Mark Price and Larry Nance, all these guys, man. So shout out to Patrick Ewing, like I said, for staying true to himself, never teaming up. This is what these guys did not do, man. This is why we respect these guys. Even though they did not win a championship, Patrick Ewing is still well respected in NBA's history, especially by the New York fans, man. For real, they respect and appreciate what Patrick Ewing meant to the New York Knicks all those years. Like I said, man, battling against Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls. When we think about someone like a Dominique Wilkins, like I told you, man, Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan didn't necessarily battle against each other in the postseason like the New York Knicks battle against the Chicago Bulls. You know, Dominique Wilkins, Atlanta Hawks battling against Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls in the postseason. No, it wasn't like that. I believe Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan only played each other against one time in the postseason. I believe they played faced off against each other in the 1993 Eastern Conference first round, and Chicago Bulls beat them 3-0. That was the Atlanta Hawks with Dominique Wilkins, Kevin Willis, Mookie Blaylock, Stacey Augmon. This was a very good team, Atlanta Hawks team. But shout out to Dominique Wilkins, because Dominique Wilkins was battling once again in the Eastern Conference from 1983 when he came into the NBA all the way to the mid to late 90s there. Dominique Wilkins was battling in that Eastern Conference, battling on the Atlanta Hawks, played for on the Atlanta Hawks for 10, 11 seasons. He played for the Atlanta Hawks. Dominique Wilkins battling against Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Pistons, Larry Bird and the Celtics, Sidney Moncrief and the Milwaukee Bucks, right? These are the teams he was going against, man. The Dr. J Sixers. This is Dominique Wilkins in the Eastern Conference on the Atlanta Hawks coming into the league, man. This is part of the reason why the man's never won a championship, because some of the quality teams that he was on for those Atlanta Hawks, he was battling against some of the all-time great teams, against the all-time great players of his era. Like I said, the Larry Birds, the Isaiah Thomases, the Michael Jordans in that Eastern Conference, guys. These are the Eastern Conference foes that Michael Jordan was going against, that was in that Eastern Conference that was really stacked. I told you, in that mid to late 80s, man, that early to late 80s, that Eastern Conference was ridiculous, guys. The 80s was top heavy, man. And then as it went from the late 80s into the 90s, it was more balanced. Whereas great teams on top, but you had well-balanced teams there, man. Some of the other teams that were there were really, really good. This is why someone like a Dominique Wilkins, shout out to my man Dominique Wilkins, one of the reasons why he was never able to capture a championship, battling against some of those teams. But Dominique Wilkins did not sell himself. He did not ring chase and team hop in the prime of his career. He did not look to go play with a Michael Jordan or go play with a Patrick Ewing or Charles Barkley. None of these guys, man. He did not try to join a Larry Bird or join a Detroit Pistons team. Right? Dominique Wilkins is synonymous with the Atlanta Hawks. Once again, when you think about Dominique Wilkins, you think about the Atlanta Hawks. When you think about the Atlanta Hawks back in them days, you thought about Dominique Wilkins. This is what you thought about. And as the years went on, like I said, the Atlanta Hawks had some quality teams there in the late 80s there into the early 90s. When you talk about, they added older Moses Malone. You had guys like Doc Rivers there on that team. Like I said, you had the Kevin Willises, Dominique Wilkins. You had guys, like I said, guys coming later on like Stacey Augmons, the Mookie Blaylocks. But they were a very good team, man. But they were just in a very tough Eastern Conference. Like I said, you had teams like the Milwaukee Bucks that I've talked about many times, guys, in that mid to late 80s, the early to mid 80s, man. That Milwaukee Bucks team, they were stout. One of the best defensive teams. They were just tough, man. So shout out to Dominique Wilkins, once again, always carrying himself, even to this day, with the class, the integrity, one of the true competitors, man, out there on the basketball court. The human highlight film would put on a show, man. A true sportsman, like a true showman, man. Is one of the great talents in NBA's history, man. So shout out to Dominique Wilkins, man. Even though the man never won a championship, still one of the most respected players of that era. But people don't mention Dominique Wilkins much because he never won a championship. But there's reasons why this, guys. These guys did not go and team hop, like I said, and form super teams and join the other great players. They wanted to beat these guys. And then when we think about a Reggie Miller, like I said, I wanted to focus on those three players. We think about Reggie Miller. Once again, to me, Reggie Miller played with the heart, the grit, the toughness of a Reggie Miller, the frail frame of Reggie Miller. You look at Reggie Miller on the videotape, the skinny arms, the skinny body, right? All bones, it looks like, for Reggie Miller, right? Known for being an outside shooter. But Reggie Miller played with a lot of heart, man, a lot of grit, a lot of toughness, battling against Michael Jordan. Now, once again, similar to a Dominique Wilkins, he did not battle Michael Jordan repeatedly in the postseason like a Patrick Ewing did on the New York Knicks. However, he was in the Eastern Conference in the same division many years as a Michael Jordan, battling against the Chicago Bulls year after year after year in that Eastern Conference. So they were always playing against each other, Reggie Miller and the Chicago Bulls, Reggie Miller and the Pacers going against Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls. And we all know about the memorable 1998 Eastern Conference Finals when they beat the Indiana Pacers. Michael Jordan and the Bulls beat the Indiana Pacers led by Reggie Miller in a 7-game series. And many people believe that was the Indiana Pacers' best chance to win a championship. That 1998 team, man, was great, man. They were really good with Chris Mullin and Mark Jackson and Rick Smits and Antonio Davis and Dale Davis and Derek McKee. And I don't know if they had Sam Perkins on that team, but they just had a really quality team, man. They were, like I said, just really quality team. And that was probably, their best chance to win a title. Even though they would go into the NBA Finals in 2000, a lot of people believe that 1998 team, man, was really, really their best shot, or Reggie Miller's best shot to win a championship. But he ran into a Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls in 1998. But Reggie Miller, once again, always battling, never giving up, coming back year after year, all those years on the Indiana Pacers, like 17, 18 seasons, whenever he played in the Indiana Pacers, always there, always being the leader. Like I said, carrying himself with the integrity, playing with the heart, known as being a prime-time performer, a clutch-time performer. Anytime you need a big basket, Reggie Miller was known for Miller time, battling against the New York Knicks and the Miami Heats, the Chicago Bulls in those Eastern Conferences, from the late 80s into those 90s when Reggie Miller came in the NBA, man. So shout out to Reggie Miller, like I said, never joining Michael Jordan, never joining Detroit Pistons or joining some of these other teams in the early 90s or the mid-90s to try to beat Michael Jordan, never joined up with a Patrick Ewing on the New York Knicks, never joined up with the Miami Heat to beat Michael Jordan in the late 90s. No, Reggie Miller stayed on the Indiana Pacers as the leader, right? And showing the true heart, man, these guys, man. Like I said, they earned the respect of the people by going out there and playing the game the right way, respecting the game, playing for a love of the game, playing to win and to beat each other. True competitors, man. Once again, Reggie Miller, like I said, never selling out, joining and hopping all over these teams, trying to join each other to join up to try to beat Michael Jordan. They wanted to beat Michael Jordan, being the leaders of their teams, man. So once again, you think about Patrick Ewing, you think about Reggie Miller, you think about Dominique Wilkins, three guys who played in the Eastern Conference in the 80s and the 90s. A tough time to play in the Eastern Conference when the game was still physical. I told you the Eastern Conference was known for being the physical conference. The Western Conference was not known for being as physical as the Eastern Conference. That's just the way it was, guys, in the 80s and in the 90s. And guys like Dominique Wilkins, Patrick Ewing, and Reggie Miller, they don't really get talked about much because they did not win championships. And yes, they're not going to be mentioned in the top 10 or 15 greatest players of all time because they did not win championships. And that hurts you when you're talking about the top guys in NBA's history. But these guys are all-time greats. To me, Reggie Miller is a top 10 shooting guard in NBA's history. Dominique Wilkins, you can argue, is a top 10 small forward in NBA's history, right? And once again, Patrick Ewing, to me, is arguably a top 10 center in NBA's history. To me, these are just some of the great players in the history of the game who battled in that Eastern Conference for all those years, man. And they earned the respect. You guys know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.